Chapter 1. The price of blood throat burns on Ilara's wrists had long since stopped bleeding. But the shame that was fresh, raw, and endless, she sat in the back of the wagon, knees pulled to her chest, watching the forest swallow her old life whole. The trees grew denser with every mile, their branches clawing at the gray sky like skeletal fingers. Behind her, the only home she'd ever known faded into memory. Ahead, only darkness waited. Her father hadn't even looked at her when he'd taken the gold. "It's for the pack," her mother had whispered, eyes downcast, hands trembling. "You understand, don't you, Ilara? We have no choice. The blood moon pack demands tribute. And you single quotes read ... double quotes expendable. The word had hung unspoken between them. Heavy as a stone, Ilara understood perfectly. She was human in a world that worshipped the beast. In the Silverpine Pack, where she'd grown up on the fringes of shifter society, humans were tolerated barely. They were servants, laborers, occasional bedmates when Evolve's heat ran too hot, and they weren't particular about bloodlines. But they were never family. Never truly pack, even though her mother had been human too, once. Even though Ilara had grown up listening to Volf songs in the night and learning to read the warnings in howls that echoed through the mountains, none of it mattered now. The wagon lurched over a rut in the road, and Ilara's shoulders slammed against the wooden slats. Marcus, the Silverpine enforcer driving the wagon, didn't spare her a glance. He'd been her neighbor once, had taught her to fish in the creek when she was 7. Now he ferried her to her doom with the same indifference he'd show a sack of grain. How much further? Her voice cracked from disuse. She hadn't spoken in hours. Marcus's jaw tightened. For a moment, she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Blood Moon territory starts at nightfall. Another 2 hours, maybe 3. Will they kill me quickly? The question escaped before she could stop it. This time, Marcus did look back. His eyes pale gold, like all the wolves held something that might have been pity. Or perhaps just discomfort at her directness. "The Alpha King doesn't explain himself to anyone," Marcus said carefully. "Especially not to ... double quotes." He trailed off. "Especially not to humans sold like cattle to settle a debt." Ilara's throat tightened. 6 months ago, her father had led a hunting party into Blood Moon territory. They'd killed a deer just one year, not knowing it was protected game, sacred to the Northern Pack's ritual hunts. The Blood Moon Alpha could have demanded war, could have raised Silverpine to ash and scattered the survivors. Instead, he demanded her. No one knew why. Ilara was nobody, a human girl with no rank, no value, no remarkable features beyond dark hair and eyes the color of storm clouds. She could read and write, could tend wounds and grow herbs, could move through the forest quietly enough that sometimes even the wolves didn't hear her coming. But those skills wouldn't save her now. The sun began its descent, painting the sky in shades of blood and amber. The forest changed as they crossed into Blood Moon lands. The trees grew taller here, more ancient, their bark marked with territorial slashes that made Ilara's stomach twist. She could smell the difference to a musk in the air, wild and threatening. That made her human instincts scream to run. Marcus pulled the wagon to a stop at a clearing where the road split 3 ways. "This is as far as I go," he said, his voice tight. "They'll come for you now." Ilara's heart hammered. "You're leaving me here, alone." "I cross into their territory proper, I'm dead." Marcus wouldn't meet her eyes. "I've done my part. The rest is between you and them." He climbed down from the wagon, then hesitated. Reaching into his coat, he pulled out a small knife in a worn leather sheath. He pressed it into her bound hands. "Hide this," he murmured. "Whatever happens, Ilara ... I'm sorry. Your mother, she never wanted this." Before Ilara could respond, Marcus had mounted the horse and was gone. The sound of hoofbeats fading into the dusk, she sat alone in the wagon, the knife heavy in her palms. Around her, the forest began to wake. Night sounds rose like a dark symphony, the rustle of things moving through underbrush, the distant call of an owl, and beneath it all, something else. Something that made her skin prickle with awareness. She wasn't alone anymore. Ilara's breath came shallow as she scanned the tree line. Their movement in the shadows. and there a pair of eyes, glowing amber in the failing light. Then another pair, and another. They emerged from the forest-like smoke-given form. 5 wolves, each one massive, their fur ranging from silver to black to a deep russet that seemed to absorb the light. They moved with predatory grace, circling the wagon, and Alara fought the urge to scream. The largest wolf approached a massive black beast with eyes like molten gold. Power radiated from him in waves that made Alara's very bones ache. This was no ordinary pack member. This was someone important. Perhaps even the Alpha King himself. The thought made her dizzy with terror. The black wolf stopped 5 feet from the wagon, close enough that she could see the intelligence burning in those inhuman eyes. He stared at her with an intensity that felt like being flayed open, as if he could see every secret, every fear, every desperate hope she tried to bury. Then he did something that made her blood run cold. He shifted. The transformation was nothing like the stories. There was no screaming, no cracking of bones, no grotesque display. One moment, a wolf stood before her. The next, a man. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with black hair that fell past his collar and a face that might have been carved from stone-all-hard angles and sharp edges, except for his mouth, which was disturbingly sensual. He wore dark clothes that seemed to have materialized with the shift, and his eyes remained that same burning gold. When he spoke, his voice was a rumble that resonated in her chest. Alara Thorne. The silver pine offering. He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. You're not what I expected. Alara forced herself to meet his gaze, even as every instinct screamed to look away, to submit, to make herself small. And what did you expect, Alpha King? Something flickered across his face, surprise, perhaps, that she would dare speak to him so directly. One of the other wolves, still in beast form, let out a warning growl. The man raised a hand, silencing the wolf without looking away from Alara. When he moved closer, she could smell him pine and smoke and something wild that made her head swim. I expected someone broken, he said softly. Someone who would beg for mercy before I even spoke. Would it matter if I did? No, at least he was honest. The Alpha King reached out, and Alara flinched, but he merely cut the ropes binding her wrists with a claw that extended from his fingertip. The ropes fell away, and she rubbed feeling back into her hands. The knife Marcus had given her pressed against her palm. I am Kale Blood Moon, he said, stepping back. And you belong to me now. The words should have terrified her. Instead, something strange happened. As his eyes locked onto hers, as those words settled into the space between them, Alara felt something shift deep in her chest. A pull. A recognition that made no sense but felt more real than anything she'd ever experienced. For just a moment, Cal's expression cracked. His eyes widened, and he took a sharp breath as if she'd struck him. No, he whispered, and the words sounded like a prayer and a curse all at once. That's impossible. Before Alara could ask what he meant, Kale turned away sharply, addressing the other wolves in a language she didn't understand. All growls and rough consonants that made the others bristle with attention. When he looked back at her, his face had become a mask once more. Get in the wagon, he ordered. We have a long way to go, and I don't trust you to keep up on foot. As the wagon began to move, pulled now by 2 of the wolves in harness, Alara's mind raced. Something had happened in that moment when their eyes met. Something that had shaken even an Alpha King. And as the Blood Moon territory swallowed her whole, Alara couldn't shake the feeling that she hadn't been brought here as a sacrifice. She'd been brought here for a reason neither of them understood yet. A reason that might destroy them both. Chapter 2. The broken fortress Blood Moon compound rose from the forest like a scar on the landscape, all dark stone and iron gates, built into the mountainside as if the pack had carved their home from the earth itself. Torches blazed along the walls, casting dancing shadows that made the sentries look more monster than man. As the wagon rolled through the main gates, Alara felt dozens of eyes tracking her movement. She was prey entering the predator's den. Kale had ridden ahead on horseback, leaving her with 2 guards who hadn't spoken a single word during the journey. Now, as the wagon came to a stop in a courtyard bustling with pack members, Ilara's pulse hammered in her throat. Wolves in human form moved through the space with casual dominance, warriors with scars, women with predatory grace, children who wrestled with a ferocity that would have been alarming anywhere else. All of them stopped to stare when they caught her scent. Human. The word rippled through the crowd in whispers, in sneers, in glances that ranged from curious to contemptuous. Ilara kept her chin high even as her hands trembled. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her fear. A woman approached the wagon, tall and striking, with auburn hair braided down her back and eyes like chips of amber ice. She wore leather armor that had seen real battle, and the way the others deferred to her spoke of rank. "So this is the Silverpine tribute," the woman said, her voice dripping with disdain. She circled the wagon slowly, taking in Ilara with the same assessment one might give a horse at market. "Disappointing. I expected someone more. Impressive, considering what Kale paid for you, paid." Ilara's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I was told this was a debt settlement." The woman's smile was all teeth. "Is that what they told you? How sweet." She leaned closer, and Ilara caught the scent of blood and wild things. Kale could have demanded gold, land, or a dozen wolves for breeding stock. Instead, he asked for you specifically. By name. Now why do you think that is? Ilara's mind reeled. By name. That couldn't be right. She'd never met Kale before tonight. Never even heard of him until 6 months ago when the debt was called enough. Rhea. Cal's voice cut through the courtyard like a blade. He strode toward them with the kind of authority that made people instinctively move out of his path. "Take her to the East Tower. 3rd floor. No one enters without my permission." Rhea's expression tightened. "The East Tower? Kale, that's not a request." His tone left no room for argument. Rhea held his gaze for a long moment, something complex passing between them, old history, perhaps, or a challenge he'd face later. Then she inclined her head with barely concealed irritation. "As you wish, Alpha." She grabbed Ilara's arm, her grip just short of bruising. "Come on, human." Tried to keep up, Ilara stumbled as she was hauled from the wagon, her legs stiff from hours of travel. She cast one glance back at Kale, but he'd already turned away, deep in conversation with a grizzled older Volf who looked like he'd been carved from granite. The compound was a maze of stone corridors and spiral staircases. Rhea set a punishing pace, clearly hoping Ilara would struggle to maintain it. They passed training rooms where wolves sparred with savage intensity, kitchens where the scent of roasting meat made Ilara's empty stomach clench, and what looked like a council chamber where maps covered every surface. This wasn't just a pack house. This was a war fortress. The East Tower was separate from the main structure, connected by a covered bridge. As they climbed the stairs, Rhea finally spoke again. "You should know something, human." Her voice was cold. "Kale is the most powerful alpha in 5 territories. He could have anyone, any female, any alliance, any mate worthy of his bloodline. So whatever game you think you're playing, whatever spell you think you've cast—" "I haven't done anything," Ilara interrupted, exhaustion making her bold. "I didn't ask to be here. I don't want to be here. And I certainly didn't cast any spell." Rhea stopped so abruptly that Ilara nearly collided with her. The woman turned, and for the first time, Ilara saw something other than contempt in her eyes. Something that might have been concern. "Then you're in more danger than you realize," Rhea said quietly. "Because Kale doesn't do anything without a reason. And if he wanted you specifically, double quote." She trailed off, shaking her head. "The 3rd floor. Don't try to leave. The guards will stop you violently if necessary." She unlocked a heavy wooden door and pushed it open, revealing a room that stole Ilara's breath. It wasn't a cell. The space was large, almost luxurious, with a 4-poster bed draped in dark furs, a fireplace already crackling with warmth, and tall windows that overlooked the forest. Books lined one wall. A bathing room connected to the side. This was a guest chamber, or more accurately, a room for someone important. "I don't understand," Ilara whispered. "Neither does anyone else." Rhea stepped back into the corridor. "There's water in the basin, clothes in the wardrobe. Someone will bring food." Cal will send for you when he's ready. The door closed with a heavy thud, followed by the scrape of a lock. Alone, finally alone, Alara let herself collapse onto the edge of the bed. Her body shook with delayed shock, with the weight of everything that had happened in the span of a single day. Sold by her family. Delivered to an enemy alpha, locked in a tower like some twisted fairy tale. But this wasn't a fairy tale. And there would be no rescue. She forced herself to stand to explore the room with trembling steps. The wardrobe held simple but well-made clothing, leather pants, soft shirts, a heavy cloak, all in sizes that would fit her perfectly. As if someone had known her measurements. As if this had been prepared for her arrival. Cal asked for you specifically. By name, Alara's hands clenched into fists. What did the Alpha King want with her? Why had he paid for a human girl he'd never met? And what had happened in that moment when their eyes locked, that impossible recognition that had made even him falter? She moved to the window, pressing her palm against the cold glass. The forest stretched endlessly in all directions, dark and wild. Somewhere in those trees, her old pack was settling in for the night, already forgetting she'd ever existed. A soft knock startled her. "Come in," she called, expecting a servant with food. Instead, the door opened to reveal Cal. He'd changed into fresh clothes, a dark shirt that clung to his broad shoulders, leather pants, boots that made no sound against the stone floor. His hair was damp as if he'd bathed, and without the road dust, Alara could see him more clearly. He was younger than she'd initially thought, perhaps 30, but his eyes held the weight of someone who'd lived 100 lifetimes. Those eyes found hers, and again, Alara felt that pull. That wrongness and rightness all tangled together. "You're settled," Cal said. "It wasn't a question. I'm locked in a tower," Alara corrected. "That's not the same as settled." His lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him but leaving it unlocked. The room suddenly felt smaller with him in it, the air charged with something Alara couldn't name. "I need to know something," he said, his voice low and rough. "And I need you to answer truthfully. Why would I lie to you? You hold all the power here, do I?" The question seemed to surprise him as much as it did her. He moved closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. "Have you ever been to Blackwater Creek?" The name meant nothing to her. "No, the White Pine Sanctuary. The Northern Hunting Grounds." "No, I've barely left Silverpine territory in my entire life." Cal's jaw tightened. He raised a hand as if to touch her face, then caught himself, fist clenching at his side. "Then explain this," he growled. "Explain why my Volf recognizes you. Why every instinct I have is screaming that you're—" He cut himself off abruptly, turning away, his shoulders rigid with tension. "That I'm what?" Alara pressed, her heart racing. When Cal looked back at her, his eyes had shifted, no longer fully human, the Volf bleeding through. "Impossible," he finished. "You're supposed to be impossible." Before Alara could respond, before she could demand answers, Cal was gone. The door closed behind him with careful control, and she heard his footsteps retreating down the corridor, first walking, then running. Then the unmistakable sound of someone shifting mid-stride. Alara stood frozen, her mind spinning. His Volf recognized her. His instincts were screaming something he wouldn't name, and suddenly Rhea's words took on new meaning. Cal is the most powerful alpha in 5 territories. He could have any mate worthy of his bloodline. Mate. The word settled into Alara's bones like truth, terrifying and absolute. Cal Blood Moon hadn't bought her as a slave or a sacrifice. He'd claimed her as something far more dangerous, and he was just as terrified by it as she was. Chapter 3. Ghosts in the Blood. Alara didn't sleep that night. She lay in the enormous bed, wrapped in furs that smelled of pine and something distinctly wolfish, and stared at the ceiling while her mind raced. Every creak of the tower, every distant howl from the forest made her pulse spike. But Cal didn't return. No one came except a silent servant who'd left a tray of food-roasted venison, fresh bread, winter berries that Alara had been too anxious to touch. By the time dawn painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, she'd made a decision. She couldn't sit in this tower waiting for answers that might never come. If Kale wanted her here for some mysterious purpose, if his Volf somehow recognized her, then she needed to understand why. And to do that, she needed information. The door was unlocked, just as Kale had left it. Elara dressed quickly in the clothes from the wardrobe, soft leather pants that fit perfectly, a dark green tunic, and sturdy boots. She braided her hair back, tucked the small knife Marcus had given her into her boot, and stepped into the corridor. 2 guards flanked the stairwell. They looked up sharply at her emergence, hands moving to weapons. "I need to speak with someone," Elara said, forcing confidence into her voice. "Someone who can tell me about this pack's history." The guards exchanged glances. One of them, a younger Volf with a scar across his jaw, cleared his throat. "The Alpha gave orders. The Alpha locked me in a room with an unlocked door," Elara interrupted. "If he wanted me imprisoned, he would have made that clear. Unless you're telling me you know his mind better than he does." The guard's eyes flashed with irritation, but he didn't argue. Wolves respected hierarchy above all else, and questioning an Alpha's decisions was dangerous ground. "There's a library," the other guard said reluctantly. "Second floor of the main keep. The keeper might speak with you." "Might not." "She doesn't take kindly to outsiders. I'll risk it." The walk through the compound in daylight revealed details Elara had missed in the darkness. The Blood Moon pack was larger than she'd realized, easily 300 strong, maybe more. Wolves trained in courtyards with brutal efficiency. Blacksmiths forged weapons in open-air forges. Children ran through the streets under the watchful eyes of their elders, already learning to move with predatory grace. And everywhere, the stairs. Some curious, some hostile, all of them marking her as other. The library was a revelation, a vast circular room that occupied an entire tower, with shelves reaching 3 stories high and ladders on rails to access the upper levels. Books, scrolls, maps, and artifacts filled every available space. The air smelled of old paper and leather and something else, herbs, maybe, or incense. An ancient woman sat at a desk near the center, so still that Elara almost missed her. Her hair was white as fresh snow, her face carved with lines that spoke of centuries rather than decades. But her eyes pale blue and sharp as winter ice tracked Elara's every movement. "So," the woman said, her voice surprisingly strong. "The human has claws after all. Most would cower in that tower for days before venturing out. I'm not most humans." Elara approached slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. "Are you the keeper?" "I am Myra, keeper of records, histories, and inconvenient truths." The old woman gestured to a chair across from her. "Sit, you're making the air nervous with your hovering." Elara sat, studying the woman carefully. There was something different about her stillness that went beyond age. "You're not just a Volf, are you?" Myra's eyebrows rose. "Perceptive. No, child. I'm something older. A seer, though that word carries too much mysticism for my taste. I simply see patterns others miss." She leaned forward. "And you, Elara Thorne, are a pattern that shouldn't exist." The use of her full name sent chills down Elara's spine. "How do you know your name?" "The same way I know why you're here. The same way I know what Kale felt the moment he saw you." Myra's expression softened slightly. "You want answers. I'll give you some, though whether they bring comfort or terror is not for me to say." Elara's hands clenched in her lap. "Why does he recognize me? We've never met. I've never been anywhere near Blood Moon territory. Haven't you?" Myra rose slowly, moving to a shelf where she pulled down a leather-bound journal. She placed it before Elara, opening to a page marked with faded ribbon. "This is the blood record. Every Alpha keeps one. It documents the bloodline, the matings, the births. Look at the entry from 26 years ago." Elara's eyes scanned the elegant script. Most of it was written in the pack's native tongue, but one section was in the common language. "A vision came to me in the midst of winter. The Mother Moon spoke of a mate yet to be born, a soul split between 2 worlds, human in flesh, but Volf in spirit. She will come from the enemy, wearing their scent but carrying our truth. She will be his salvation or his ruin." I have seen her eyes gray as storm clouds, deep as eternity. When the time comes, he will know her. The wolf always knows. The handwriting was feminine, looping, and careful. At the bottom, a signature, Liana Blood Moon Moonseer, Cal's mother, Myra said softly. She died bringing him into this world, but not before she left him this prophecy. He spent his entire life knowing his mate would come from circumstances that defy logic, that she would be human, that she would arrive when he needed her most. Alara's hands trembled as she touched the page. This can't be real. Prophecies, visions, that's just superstition, is it? Myra's gaze was penetrating. You felt it too, didn't you? That moment when your eyes met his. The recognition, the pull. Your human mind may reject it, but something deeper in you knows the truth. Alara wanted to deny it. Wanted to laugh at the absurdity of fate and moon magic and destined mates. But she couldn't, because Myra was right, she had felt it. That impossible certainty that had settled into her bones the moment Cal's golden eyes had locked onto hers. Why me? Alara whispered. I'm nobody. I have no power, no special gifts. I can't even shift, can't you? Myra tilted her head, studying Alara with unsettling intensity. Tell me, child, have you ever felt drawn to the forest at night? Ever heard voices in the howling that others couldn't understand? Ever felt your blood burn hot during the full moon? Alara's breath caught. She had all of those things. She thought it was simply from growing up among wolves, from listening to their songs since childhood. But now ... my mother was human, Alara said slowly. Completely human. My father was human. There's no wolf blood in me, blood can lie, Myra said. Or perhaps blood can forget. But the soul remembers. She closed the journal carefully. There's more you need to know, but it's not my place to tell you. Cal must. The library door burst open with enough force to rattle the shelves. Cal strode in, his expression thunderous, still wearing yesterday's clothes as if he'd never gone to bed. His hair was disheveled, his eyes wild, and power radiated off him in waves that made the very air shimmer. Myra, his voice was barely controlled. What have you told her? Only what she had the right to know. The old woman met his fury with calm. You can't hide from this, Cal. The moon doesn't lie. The moon has taken everything from me. The words exploded out of him with such raw pain that Alara flinched. My mother, my father, half my pack to war, and now he turned those burning eyes on Alara, and she saw the conflict raging in their depths. Now it asks me to tie my fate to someone I can't protect. Someone who will become a target the moment the other packs learn what she is to me. So you'll reject the bond? Myra asked softly. Send her away. That won't erase what you felt. It won't change what's already begun. Cal's hands clenched into fists. For a long moment, he stood there trembling with the effort of control. Then he looked at Alara, really looked at her, and something in his expression cracked. Come with me, he said roughly. There's something you need to see. He turned and walked out without waiting for her response. Alara looked at Myra, who nodded toward the door. Go, some truths can only be learned by walking into them. Rising on unsteady legs, Alara followed the Alpha King out of the library and into whatever revelation awaited. Behind her, she heard Myra whisper something in the old language of blessing or a warning. She couldn't tell, but as she descended the stairs in Cal's wake, feeling the pull between them grow stronger with every step, Alara knew one thing with absolute certainty. Her life would never be simple again. Chapter 4. The Alpha's burden. Cal led her through corridors she hadn't seen before, descending deeper into the mountain itself. The air grew cooler, damper, and the torches on the walls cast flickering shadows that danced like spirits. No guards followed them. No pack members appeared to question where the Alpha was taking the human girl. They were utterly alone. Where are we going? Alara finally asked when the silence became too heavy to bear. Somewhere no one else is allowed, Cal said without turning. Somewhere I should have taken you from the beginning, instead of running like a coward. The word surprised her. She couldn't imagine this powerful. Dangerous male considering himself a coward for anything. They reached a heavy iron door marked with symbols Alara didn't recognize. Old pack magic, perhaps, or warnings. Kale pressed his palm against it, and she felt a pulse of power ripple through the air. The door swung open with a groan of ancient hinges. Beyond lay a chamber unlike anything Alara had ever seen. It was part sanctuary, part memorial. The walls were covered in carved names, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, etched into the stone with painstaking care. Candles burned in alcoves, their light reflecting off crystals embedded in the ceiling. At the center of the room stood a pool of perfectly still water that seemed to glow with an inner light. "This is the Hall of Ancestors," Kale said quietly. "Every blood moon alpha comes here to speak with those who came before, to seek guidance, to remember what we fight for." He moved to the pool, staring down into its luminous depths. "My mother used to bring me here when I was young. Before she died," Alara approached slowly, drawn by the raw vulnerability in his voice. She'd seen him as an alpha, as a predator, as something dangerous and untouchable. But now she saw the man beneath, someone carrying a weight that would crush lesser souls. What happened to her? Alara asked gently. "The prophecy killed her." Cal's jaw tightened. She had visions her entire life, gifts from the Mother Moon, the elders called them. But each vision took something from her. Her strength, her vitality. The night she gave birth to me, she had the strongest vision she'd ever experienced. She saw you, Alara, described you in perfect detail, down to the color of your eyes. And then she died, smiling, telling my father that I would never be alone. His voice cracked on the last words, and Alara's heart clenched. "I grew up hating that prophecy," Kale continued. "Hating the idea that my fate was written before I could even walk. That somewhere out there was a human girl who would become the center of my world whether I wanted it or not." He finally looked at her, and the anguish in his eyes stole her breath. "And then you stepped out of that wagon, and every carefully built wall I'd constructed came crashing down." Alara moved closer, standing beside him at the pool's edge. In the water's reflection, she could see both their faces, his hard and haunted, hers uncertain but resolute. "Why did you demand me specifically?" she asked. "If you hated the prophecy, why not just let me live my life in Silverpine?" "Because 6 months ago, I started having dreams." Cal's hands gripped the stone edge of the pool. "Dreams of a woman with storm gray eyes standing in a forest, calling to me in a language I couldn't understand. Dreams of her dying, torn apart by wolves while I was too far away to save her. Every night, the same dream. Every night, watching her die." Alara's blood ran cold. "That's why you asked for me. You were trying to save me from your dreams. I was trying to control the one thing about this cursed prophecy that I could." His voice was raw. "I sent scouts to Silverpine, had them gather information about every human in the pack. And when they described you, your age, your appearance, the fact that you could move through the forest like a ghost, I knew. You were the one dying in my dreams, so you demanded me as payment for your father's debt. I gave your alpha enough gold to rebuild his entire pack house," Kale said bitterly. "The debt was an excuse. A way to bring you here without starting a war or making you a target. I thought if I could keep you close, keep you safe within these walls, the dreams would stop. That I could protect you from whatever fate the moon had planned." Alara absorbed this, her mind reeling. He'd been trying to save her. This whole time, his coldness, his distance, his anger, it had all been fear. Fear of losing someone he'd been bound to before either of them had a choice. And have they stopped? She asked softly. "The dreams." Cal's laugh was hollow. "No, if anything, they've gotten worse. Because now I know you. Now you're real, standing in front of me. And the thought of anything happening to you." He cut himself off, jaw clenching. The pool's surface rippled though nothing had touched it. Alara stared down and gasped. Images were forming in the water, shadowy, indistinct, but unmistakable. She saw herself standing in a clearing, surrounded by wolves with red eyes. Saw Kale fighting through them, covered in blood, reaching for her. Saw darkness closing in. "The pool shows possible futures," Kale said quietly. "Not certain ones, just ... possibilities." paths the future might take depending on the choices we make. That's what you see every night? Me dying? Among other things, he reached out, his hand hovering over hers on the stone, not quite touching. I also see futures where you're happy, where you're free, where you never have to be trapped in this world of blood and violence. His voice dropped to a whisper. Futures where you never have to be bound to someone like me. Allura turned to face him fully, and this close, she could see the exhaustion etched into his features, the dark circles under his eyes, the tension that held his entire body rigid. He was a man at war with himself, torn between what he wanted and what he thought was right. You said your wolf recognizes me, Allura said. What does that mean, exactly? Cal's eyes shifted, gold bleeding into them. It means that every instinct I have screams that you're mine to protect, mine to claim, mine to keep safe from anything that would dare harm you. His voice roughened, taking on the edge of a growl. It means that being near you sets my blood on fire, that your scent drives me half mad with the need to mark you, to make every wolf in 5 territories know that you're under my protection. Heat bloomed in Allura's chest, spreading through her limbs. She should be frightened by the possessiveness in his words, should be running from this dangerous male and his talk of claiming and marking. But instead, she felt something else entirely, a recognition that went bone deep, a rightness that defied all logic. I feel it too, she admitted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. This pull, like there's a thread connecting us, and it gets stronger every time we're close. I don't understand it. I don't understand any of this, but I can't deny it's real. Cal's breath hitched. His hand finally closed over hers, warm and rough and solid. The moment their skin touched, Allura felt a jolt of energy shoot through her, not painful, but intense, like lightning dancing along her nerves. Cal felt it too. His eyes widened, his grip tightening reflexively. The bond is forming, he said hoarsely. Even without the mating ritual, even without acceptance, it's choosing us whether we want it or not. And what happens when it's complete? Allura asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Then we're tied together for life, soul to soul. What I feel, you'll feel. My pain becomes yours. Your joy becomes mine. Death itself would be the only thing that could sever it. His thumb traced over her knuckles, a gesture so tender it made her ache. That's why I've been trying to push you away. Why I disappeared last night. Because once the bond fully forms, there's no going back. And I won't force that on you, Allura. I won't trap you in a fate you never asked for. What if I'm already trapped? The question escaped before she could think better of it. What if I've been trapped since the moment I saw you? Since the moment my blood recognized something my mind can't explain? Cal stared at her, something fierce and desperate warring in his expression. For a moment, Allura thought he might close the distance between them, might give in to whatever was building in the charged air around them. Instead, he pulled back, releasing her hand with visible effort. I need to show you one more thing, he said roughly. And then I'll give you a choice. A real one. No prophecies, no bonds, no pressure. Just truth. He led her to the far wall where a single name was carved larger than all the others, surrounded by symbols that seemed to pulse with faint light. Liana Blood Moon. Moonseer and Mother, beneath it, carved in smaller script, were her final words. The human girl will be his salvation, but only if he's brave enough to let her choose her own fate. Force her, and both shall fall. Trust her, and both shall rise. The moon provides the path, but free will must walk it. Allura read the words twice, 3 times, letting them sink in. You're giving me a choice, she said slowly. Whether to accept this bond or not. Yes, Cal's voice was steady, but his hands trembled at his sides. Stay here, under my protection, and let the bond form naturally. Or I'll send you somewhere safe. Somewhere far from pack politics and prophecies and alphas who dream of your death. I'll make sure you're provided for, that you're free, and if I stay. His eyes met hers, burning with intensity. Then I'll spend every day proving that you made the right choice, even if it kills me. The weight of the decision settled over Alara like a physical thing. Stay and accept destiny written before her birth. Leave and wonder forever what might have been. But as she stood there in the Hall of Ancestors, feeling the echo of centuries of love and loss in the very stones, Alara realized something crucial. The choice had already been made. The moment her heart had recognized his, the moment she'd felt that impossible pull, she was exactly where she was meant to be. Chapter 5. The choice made. I need time, Alara said. Though the words felt like a lie even as they left her lips, Cal nodded, his expression carefully neutral, but she caught the flash of disappointment, or was it relief, in his eyes before he masked it. Take all the time you need. I won't rush you into a decision that will alter your entire life. They stood in heavy silence, the weight of unspoken words pressing down on them. Finally, Cale gestured toward the door. We should return before the pack starts questioning where I've taken you. There are already enough rumors circulating. The walk back through the corridors felt different now. The air between them hummed with awareness, with possibility, with the ghost of what could be. Every accidental brush of their hands sent sparks racing up Alara's arm. Every shared glance held volumes of conversation they weren't brave enough to voice aloud. When they emerged into the main compound, the morning had given way to afternoon. The training yards were full of wolves sparring with brutal efficiency. Their movements a violent dance that was both beautiful and terrifying. Cale. A voice rang out across the courtyard. Rhea strode toward them, her expression tight with urgency. We have a situation. The Western Border Patrol found tracked Silverpine wolves, at least a dozen, moving through our territory. Alara's blood ran cold. Silverpine, her former pack, Cal's entire demeanor shifted in an instant. The vulnerable man from the Hall of Ancestors disappearing behind the mask of an alpha. How long ago? Less than an hour. They're not trying to hide their scent, which means either they're incredibly stupid or it's a message, Cale finished grimly. He glanced at Alara, something protective flashing in his eyes. Get her back to the tower. Double the guards. No, the word came out stronger than Alara intended. Both Cale and Rhea turned to stare at her. If this is about me, I should be there. I know how Silverpine thinks. How they operate? Absolutely not, Cale said flatly. You're not going anywhere near a potential conflict. She might have a point, Rhea said slowly, earning a sharp look from Cale. If they're here for the human, they'll expect us to have her locked away. They won't expect her standing beside you. It could give us an advantage, or it could get her killed, Cale growled. I can handle myself. Alara interjected. I grew up in that pack. I know their weaknesses. Cale turned to her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. This isn't about whether you can handle yourself. This is about the fact that if anything happens to you, if they so much as draw a drop of your blood, he cut himself off, his hands clenching into fists. I won't be able to control what happens next. The admission hung in the air between them. Rhea's eyebrows rose, understanding dawning on her face. The bond, she breathed. Moon above, Cale, it's already started, hasn't it? He didn't answer, but the muscle ticking in his jaw was confirmation enough. Rhea looked between them, her expression shifting from surprise to something that might have been respect. Then she's safer with you than anywhere else. Your Volf won't let anything touch her. A howl pierced the air long, mournful, carrying a challenge that made every Volf in the compound freeze. That's Alpha Marcus, Alara said, recognizing the voice. My father's second. He's calling for a parley. Cal's eyes flashed cold. Then we answer. But you, he turned to Alara, his hand cupping her face with unexpected gentleness. Stay behind me, always, and if I tell you to run, you run. Understood. The touch sent warmth flooding through her, and Alara found herself leaning into his palm before she could stop herself. Understood. They assembled quickly, Cale at the center, flanked by Rhea and 6 of his strongest warriors. Alara walked slightly behind Cale, close enough to hear his steady breathing, to feel the controlled power radiating from him. The other wolves kept glancing at her, questions clear in their eyes, but none dared to speak. The western border was a 20-minute walk through dense forest. As they approached, Elara could smell the familiar scent of silver pine, wolf's earth, and cedar, and something bitter that spoke of desperation. They emerged into a clearing where 12 wolves waited in a semicircle. All were in human form, dressed for travel, armed with silver-tipped weapons. At their center stood Marcus, his weathered face grim. When his eyes found Elara, something complicated flickered across his expression. Guilt, perhaps. Or calculation. Alpha Blood Moon, Marcus called out, his voice carrying across the space. I come under flag of parley to discuss a matter of pack law. You come into my territory without permission, Kale replied, his voice cold as winter steel. That alone is grounds for execution. Speak quickly, Silverpine Wolf. Before I decide your life is forfeit, Marcus's jaw tightened. We've come for the human. The payment was made in error. Alara's heart lurched. Error? Your father has reconsidered, Marcus continued, not quite meeting her eyes. The debt has been cleared through other means. We're here to bring you home, liar. The word came from Elara before she could stop it. She stepped forward, ignoring Kel's warning growl. My father took your gold gladly. He didn't even look at me when he did it. This isn't about reconsidering, this is about something else. Marcus's expression hardened. Watch your tongue, girl. You may be living among wolves now, but you're still bound by pack law. She's bound by nothing, Kale said softly, dangerously. The moment your alpha took my gold, she ceased to be Silverpine's concern. She belongs to Blood Moon now, does she? Marcus's eyes gleamed with something ugly. Because pack law states that a human given in tribute can be reclaimed within a lunar cycle if the debt is repaid twofold. We've brought your gold back, Alpha, plus an equal amount. He gestured to several wolves who dropped heavy sacks on the ground. More than enough to settle the matter. Cal's silence was deadly. Elara could feel the rage building in him, could sense his wolf pressing against his control. There's one problem with your claim, Cal said finally. The human in question must consent to be reclaimed. Pack law requires her agreement. He turned, pinning Marcus with a look that could cut stone. Or did you conveniently forget that part? Marcus's face went pale. Clearly, he had forgotten or hoped Kale wouldn't know the fine print of pack law. All eyes turned to Lara. The choice she told Kale she needed time for suddenly crystallized with perfect clarity. Stay in Silverpine, where she'd been sold like property, where she'd always be lesser, always be expendable. Or stay here in this dangerous new world. With an alpha who'd paid far more than required, who dreamed of saving her, who looked at her like she was something precious. I don't consent, Elara said clearly. I'm staying with Blood Moon. Marcus's face twisted with anger. You don't understand what you're doing, girl. What you're choosing. He's using you for something wolves don't care about humans beyond what they can provide. Perhaps Silverpine wolves don't. Elara shot back. But I'm not in Silverpine anymore. You'll regret this, Marcus snarled. When he tires of you, when whatever game he's playing ends, you'll have nowhere to go. We won't take you back. Good? The word surprised even Elara with its vehemence. I never want to see any of you again. Kale moved then, placing himself between Elara and the Silverpine wolves. You have your answer. Now leave my territory before I forget the rules of parley and paint this clearing with your blood. The threat wasn't empty. Elara could feel the violence coiled in Cal's frame. Could see the way his warriors had shifted position. Ready to attack on command. Marcus held Cal's gaze for a long moment, then spat on the ground. Keep her, then. But know this, Blood Moon, there are other packs asking questions about why you wanted a human girl specifically. About what makes her so special. His smile was cruel. How long before they come looking for answers? With that, the Silverpine wolves melted back into the forest, leaving the gold scattered on the ground like an insult. The moment they were gone, Kale turned to Elara, his hands framing her face, his eyes searching hers with desperate intensity. Are you sure? He asked roughly. Once we walk away from that gold, there's no going back. You'll be mine in the eyes of every pack. Protected, yes, but also a target. Everything that threatens me will threaten you. Elara placed her hands over his, anchoring herself in his touch. I'm sure. I choose this. I choose. She swallowed hard. I choose you. Something broke open in Cal's expression, relief and joy and terror all tangled together. He pulled her against him, his arms wrapping around her with such careful fierceness that Elara felt tears prick her eyes. Then I swear to you, he murmured against her hair. No one will ever make you feel expendable again. Not while I draw breath. Behind them, Rhea cleared her throat. We should move. Marcus was right about one thing if other packs are asking questions. We need to prepare. Cal nodded, but he didn't release Elara. Instead, he kept one arm around her as they walked back toward the compound. As if he couldn't bear to let her go, and Elara found she didn't want him to, the bond between them pulsed with new strength, fed by her choice, by his promise, by the danger they now faced together. Whatever came next, they would face it as one. Chapter 6. Blood Memoryth compound erupted into controlled chaos upon their return. Word of the Silver Pine incursion spread like wildfire, and with it, whispers about the human who'd chosen to stay. Elara felt the weight of dozens of stairs as Cal led her through the courtyard, his hand still firmly wrapped around hers. Council chamber, Rhea said quietly. Now, we need to discuss security measures. Cal hesitated, his thumb tracing circles on Elara's palm, an absent, protective gesture that sent warmth spiraling through her. I'm not leaving her alone. Not after Marcus's threat. Then bring her to the council, Rhea replied. It's time the pack understood what's happening anyway. The rumors are already worse than the truth. They entered a circular stone chamber where several wolves already waited around a massive oak table. Elara recognized the grizzled warrior from her first night. His name was Theron. She'd learned, Cal's second in command. Others she didn't know, but their ranks were clear from the way they carried themselves. These were the pack's elite. The moment Elara crossed the threshold, every conversation stopped. You brought the human to a council meeting. A woman with silver-streaked hair and ice-blue eyes spoke, her tone sharp. Kale, have you lost your mind? Careful, Serena, Kale warned softly. You're speaking about someone under my direct protection. Serena's eyes narrowed. Protection is one thing. Bringing her into pack business is another entirely. She's mine. The word came out with such finality, such primal possessiveness, that several wolves actually flinched. Elara is mine, my mate, my responsibility, and she will be treated with the same respect you show me, or you'll answer to my Volf. The silence that followed was deafening. Theron was the first to recover, a slow smile spreading across his weathered face. Well, that explains a few things. He nodded to Elara with something that looked like approval. Welcome to the pack, girl. You've got steel in you if you're willing to tie yourself to this stubborn bastard. A few chuckles broke the tension, but Serena still looked troubled. A human mate. Do you understand what you've done, Kale? The other alphas will see this as weakness. They'll let them try, Kale interrupted coldly. Now sit. We have actual threats to discuss, not theoretical political maneuvering. They settled around the table, and Elara found herself seated beside Kale, very aware that she was the only human in a room full of predators. Yet Cal's presence at her side was steady, grounding. Marcus mentioned other packs asking questions. Rhea began. We need to know who and what they're asking. Theron pulled out a map, marking several locations. I've had reports from our scouts. Shadowclaw pack sent emissaries to Silverpine 3 weeks ago. Ironwood did the same. Both were asking about the tribute payment, specifically about the human. Why would they care? Elara asked, then flinched when all eyes turned to her. But Cal's hand found hers under the table, squeezing gently. Go on, he said. Your insight matters here. Emboldened, Elara continued. I'm nobody. Just a human girl with no rank, no connections. There's no strategic value in knowing about me unless ... double quote. She trailed off, her mind racing. Unless they know something we don't. Something about why you wanted me specifically. The prophecy, Serena said grimly. Someone leaked information about Liana's final vision. Cal's entire body went rigid. That's impossible. Only the inner circle knows the full prophecy. Only the wolves in this room and Myra. Then we have a traitor, Rhea said flatly. Or someone who's very good at gathering secrets. The implication hung heavy in the air. If other packs knew about the prophecy, about Elara being Kel's destined mate, she wasn't just a curiosity, she was a weapon. A way to weaken the most powerful alpha in 5 territories. We need to accelerate her training, Theron said, looking at Elara appraisingly. If she's going to be a target, she needs to know how to defend herself. I can fight, Elara said, lifting her chin. I'm not helpless. Human fighting and Volf fighting are very different things, Serena countered, though her tone had softened slightly. You'll need to learn our ways, our weaknesses and strengths, how to move among us without becoming prey. I'll teach her, Kel said immediately. Rhea shook her head. You're too close to the situation. Your Volf will be too protective to push her hard enough. Let me do it. I'll make sure she can handle herself. Kel looked ready to argue, but Elara spoke first. I'd like that. Thank you, Rhea. The warrior woman studied her for a long moment, then nodded. We start at dawn. Don't expect me to go easy on you just because you're sharing Kel's bed. I'm not. Elara's face heated. We're not yet, Kel murmured, so quietly only she could hear. The single word sent a shiver down her spine. The meeting continued for another hour, discussing patrol routes, security measures, and potential alliances. Throughout it all, Elara listened carefully, absorbing information about the complex political landscape of packed territories. It was far more intricate than she'd imagined. Old feuds, new alliances, power plays that stretched back generations. By the time they emerged from the council chamber, twilight had painted the sky in shades of purple and deep blue. The compound had grown quieter, wolves settling in for the evening meal. You should eat, Kel said, guiding her toward what looked like a communal dining hall. You barely touched your food this morning. I wasn't exactly hungry while being interrogated about my fate, Elara pointed out. Earning a ghost of a smile from him, they entered the hall together, and again, conversations faltered. But this time, instead of hostility, Elara saw curiosity. Wolves watched as Kel led her to a table, as he served her food with his own hands, a gesture that clearly meant something. Judging by the reactions around them, you're claiming me publicly, Elara said softly as he sat beside her. I'm showing the pack that you're not just protected, you're treasured. His eyes met hers, golden and intense. There's a difference. They ate in comfortable silence, surrounded by the sounds of pack life, laughter, arguments, the clatter of dishes. It should have felt foreign, threatening even. Instead, Elara felt something unexpected, belonging. After dinner, Kel led her back toward the tower, but instead of the stairs, he took her to a side door that opened onto a balcony overlooking the forest. I used to come here as a child, he said, leaning against the railing. When the weight of being alpha in training became too much. When I needed to remember that there was a world beyond duty and prophecy, Elara joined him, the cool night air raising goosebumps on her arms. Without a word, Kel shrugged out of his jacket and draped it around her shoulders. It smelled like hempine and smoke and something wild that made her pulse quicken. Can I ask you something? Elara ventured. Anything. Earlier, you told the council I was your mate, but I haven't. We haven't. Single quotes, double quotes. She struggled for words. I thought there was a ritual. A formal bond. There is, Kel confirmed, his voice low. But the bond begins before that. It's beginning right now, with every moment we spend together. Every touch. Every choice to stay. He turned to face her fully. The mating ritual completes it, makes it unbreakable. But the connection, that's already being written into our souls. As if to prove his point, Elara felt a warmth bloom in her chest, not physical heat, but something deeper. An awareness of Kel that went beyond sight or sound. She could sense his emotions, like echoes in her own heart, protectiveness, desire, and beneath it all, a bone-deep fear of losing her. I feel it too, she whispered. Your emotions, your presence, Kel's breath caught. That shouldn't be possible yet. Not before the ritual. Unless he stared at her with renewed intensity. Elara, has anything strange happened to you recently? Any physical changes, unusual strength, heightened senses? She thought back over the past few days. My hearing seems sharper. And earlier, in the forest when Marcus was speaking, I could smell his fear. Actually smell it, like copper and sweat. I thought I was imagining it. You're not imagining anything. Cal's hands kept her face, his touch gentle despite the urgency in his voice. Your human blood is waking up to something else. Something Volf, but that's impossible. Elara protested. I'm completely human. My parents were human. There's no Volf in my bloodline. Blood can lie. Kale echoed Myra's words. Or perhaps blood can be dormant for generations, waiting for the right catalyst to wake it. The bond, Elara realized. Being near you is triggering something in me. Not just being near me, choosing me. Accepting the connection. He leaned his forehead against hers, his voice rough with emotion. Elara, I need you to understand something. If Volf blood is waking in you, it means you could shift. It means you could become one of us fully. But the transformation, it's not gentle. It's not easy. And there's no guarantee you'll survive it. Fear spiked through her, but beneath it, something else stirred. Something that felt like recognition. Like coming home. What if I was always meant to be Volf? She asked. What if that's why your mother saw me? Why the bond feels so right? Kale pulled back enough to look into her eyes, and what she saw there stole her breath. Then I'll be there for every moment of your transformation. I'll fight whatever tries to stop it. And when you emerge on the other side, Volf or human or something in between, you'll still be mine. That will never change. The promise settled into Elara's bones like truth. And as they stood together in the moonlight, the bond between them pulsed with new strength, fed by words spoken and feelings shared far in the forest. Wolves began their evenings on a haunting chorus that spoke of pack and family and belonging, and for the first time in her life, Elara understood every note. Chapter 7, Awakening Dawn came too early. Elara woke to someone pounding on her door. And when she stumbled to answer it, she found Reyes standing in the corridor with her arms crossed and an expression that promised pain. Training yard. 5 minutes. Don't bother with breakfast fuel. Just lose it anyway. The warrior woman turned on her heel and disappeared down the stairs. Lara dressed quickly in the training clothes that had been left on a chair, flexible leather pants, a fitted tunic, and boots with reinforced soles. When she caught her reflection in the small mirror, she barely recognized herself. The frightened girl sold by her pack seemed like a distant memory. In her place stood someone harder, sharper, someone who'd chosen to stay. The training yard was empty except for Rhea, who was stretching with the casual grace of a predator. The sun had barely crested the mountains, painting everything in shades of gold and amber. You're late, Rhea said without looking up. That's 3 laps around the compound. I still have a minute now to more laps for arguing. Want to keep going? Elara bit back her retort and started running. The compound was larger than she'd realized, and by the 3rd lap, her lungs burned and her legs trembled. But she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Not with Rhea watching every step, evaluating, judging. When she finally stumbled back to the training yard, sweat dripping down her spine, Rhea tossed her a water skin. Not bad for a human, the warrior woman said. Your endurance is better than I expected. Now let's see how you handle yourself in a real fight. What followed was 2 hours of the most brutal training Elara had ever experienced. Rhea didn't hold back. She attacked with speed and strength that left Elara scrambling, desperate, often flat on her back in the dirt. Every time Elara thought she'd found an opening, Rhea was already 3 moves ahead. You're thinking like prey, Rhea said after throwing Elara to the ground for the 10th time. You're reacting instead of anticipating. Wolves don't wait to see what you'll do. They know what you'll do before you do it. That's impossible. Elara panted, pushing herself up on shaking arms. Is it? Rhea circled her slowly. Tell me what I'm about to do. Elara watched the warrior woman carefully, trying to read her body language. But there was nothing, no telegraphing, no obvious tells. Then, suddenly, she felt it. A prickling awareness at the back of her neck. A certainty that Rhea was about to strike from the left. She dodged right just as Rhea's fist whistled through the space where her head had been. Rhea froze, her eyes widening. How did you ... double quotes, I don't know, Alara admitted, her heart racing. I just ... knew. The warrior woman studied her with new intensity. Again, don't think, just feel. They resumed sparring, and this time, something was different. Alara could sense Rhea's movements before they happened, not perfectly, not every time, but enough to avoid several strikes that should have connected. It was like having a sixth sense, an awareness that extended beyond her normal perception. Enough. Rhea stepped back, breathing hard. That's not normal human instinct. That's pack sense. The ability to read intent through the bond. But I'm not bonded to you. Alara protested. Double quotes, no. But you're bonded to Kale. And through him, you're starting to connect to the pack. Rhea's expression was complicated. I didn't want to believe it. A human becoming one of us through sheer force of will and destiny. But you're changing, Alara. Right in front of our eyes. The words should have terrified her. Instead, Alara felt a surge of something that might have been exhilaration. She was becoming more. Becoming stronger. Becoming a hull shattered the morning calm high, desperate, filled with warning. Rhea's head snapped toward the sound, her body tensing. That's the Eastern Watchtower. We're under attack. They ran together toward the source of the howl, Rhea shifting mid-stride into a massive russet valve. Alara pushed herself to keep pace, her newly awakened senses screaming danger with every step. The compound erupted into organized chaos. Warriors poured from buildings, some already shifted, others grabbing weapons. Kale appeared from the main keep, his presence commanding immediate attention. His eyes found Alara across the courtyard, and she felt his relief and his fear as clearly as if he'd spoken. Report. He barked at a Volf who came racing from the eastern gate. Shadowclaw pack, the Volf gasped, shifting to human form. At least 20 warriors. They're demanding you hand over the human or they'll consider it an act of war. Cal's expression went deadly cold. Let them try. Kale, wait. Theron appeared at his side, gripping the alpha's shoulder. This could be a trap. They want you emotional, want you to make a mistake. They're threatening what's mine, Kale growled, his eyes flashing gold. That's not a mistake to defend, it's a requirement. Alara pushed through the crowd, ignoring the protests of wolves who tried to hold her back. Let me talk to them. Absolutely not, Kale said flatly. If this is about me, I should face them. She met his gaze steadily, even as her heart hammered. I'm not a prize to be fought over. Let me prove I'm here by choice. Something warred in Cal's expression, the alpha who wanted to protect her at all costs. And the man who respected her strength enough to let her choose her own battles. I'll be with you every step, he said finally. At your side, not in front of you. But if anything goes wrong, I know. You'll paint the compound with their blood. Despite the tension, Alara felt a smile tug at her lips. Try not to start a war if you can help it. They assembled quickly, Kale, Alara, Rhea in human form, and Theron with a dozen warriors. As they approached the eastern gate, Alara could smell the Shadowclaw wolves before she saw them. Their scent was different from Blood Moon earthier, with an undercurrent of something metallic. The gates opened to reveal the Shadowclaw contingent. At their head stood a woman who radiated power, tall, with black hair shot through with silver and eyes like molten amber. An alpha in her own right, Kale Blood Moon, the woman said, her voice carrying across the space between them. I am Zara Shadowclaw. We need to discuss your ... acquisition. Alara is not an acquisition, Kale replied coldly. She's my mate, and she's under my protection. Zara's eyes found Alara, and the intensity of her gaze was almost physical. A human mate? How ... unprecedented. Tell me, little human, did you choose this? Or did the great Alpha King claim you before you knew enough to refuse? I chose this, Alara said clearly, stepping forward despite Cal's warning growl. I chose him. And I choose him again, even knowing what it will cost. Zara's smile was sharp. Even knowing that every pack in 5 territories will see you as a weakness to exploit? That your very existence puts Blood Moon at risk? Then they underestimate us both. Alara shot back. I'm not weak, Alpha Zara. And neither is he. Something flickered in Zara's expression, surprise, perhaps, or respect. Brave words. Let's see if you can back them up, she turned to Kale. Pack law allows for a challenge. If your human is truly pack, truly worthy, let her prove it. One of mine against her. A test of strength, skill, and will, no. Kale said immediately. Yes, Alara countered, surprising everyone, including herself. I'll do it. Kale turned to her, his eyes blazing. Alara, you don't understand what you're agreeing to. A pack challenge can end in death. I understand perfectly. She placed her hand on his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palm. But if I don't do this, there will always be questions, always doubts. Let me prove I belong here through their bond. She felt his turmoil, the desperate need to protect her warring with pride in her courage. Finally, he covered her hand with his. One condition, he said to Zara, first blood ends it. No deaths. Zara considered this. Agreed. First blood or submission, she gestured, and a young male stepped forward, lean, quick-looking, with scars that spoke of experience. This is Finn. He'll be gentle. The condescension in her tone made Alara's blood boil. But she simply nodded, moving to the center of the space that had cleared between the two packs. Finn shifted to form a sleek gray beast with intelligent eyes. He circled her slowly, testing, waiting for her to show fear. Alara closed her eyes. Reaching for that new awareness she'd felt during training with Rhea, the bond with Kale pulsed strong and steady, lending her strength. And beneath that, something else stirred, something wild and fierce that had been sleeping her entire life. When Finn lunged, Alara moved. She twisted aside with speed that shocked even her, her hand finding the knife in her boot in one smooth motion. As Finn landed and turned for another pass, Alara didn't retreat. She advanced, reading his intent through that impossible sixth sense. Dodging his snapping jaws by inches, the Volf was faster, stronger. But Alara was learning his patterns, feeling his movements before he made them. When he came at her again, she dropped low and flashed upward, her blade catching his shoulder just deep enough to draw blood. Finn yelped and backed away, shifting to human form with wide eyes. A thin line of red marked his shoulder, first blood. The silence was absolute. Alara stood there, breathing hard, her blade still ready, and met Zara's shocked gaze. Good enough for you? Zara stared at her for a long moment, then threw her head back and laughed, a sound of genuine delight. Moon above, Kale. Where did you find her? She found me, Kale said, and the pride in his voice made Alara's chest tighten with emotion. Zara's expression sobered. Pack Lai is satisfied. She's proven herself worthy. She stepped closer to Alara, lowering her voice so only she could hear. But know this, little Volf in waiting. Others won't be so easily convinced. And the real danger, it's not from outside Blood Moon. Watch your back, especially from those who think they had a claim to your alpha's heart. Before Alara could ask what she meant, Zara had turned away, gesturing for her pack to follow. Within moments, they were gone, disappearing into the forest-like smoke. Kale was at Alara's side in an instant, his hands running over her, checking for injuries. That was the most reckless, terrifying, incredible thing I've ever witnessed. Alara looked down at the knife in her hand, at the blood on its edge, and felt the weight of what she just then settle over her. I didn't think. I just moved. Your Volf is waking, Rhea said, approaching with something like awe in her expression. That wasn't human speed, Alara. That was shift-touched. The change is coming faster than any of us expected. As if in confirmation, Alara felt a strange heat building beneath her skin, not painful, but intense, like fire in her veins. She swayed, and Kale caught her, lifting her into his arms. Get Myra, he ordered. Now, as he carried her back toward the compound, Alara's vision swam. But through the haze, she heard the wolves around them, their voices raised not in hostility, but in respect. She'd proven herself to Shadowclaw. But more importantly, She'd proven herself to Blood Moon. She was packed now. Almost. Chapter 8. The hunt with its morning air bit sharp against Alara's skin as she stood on the balcony of Cal's quarters, watching dawn paint the forest in shades of amber and gold. Her body still hummed with residual energy from yesterday's challenge. Muscles pleasantly sore in ways that reminded her she was becoming something more than human, something dangerous, something wild. She flexed her fingers, remembering how they'd moved during the fight faster than thought, guided by instincts she hadn't possessed a week ago. The pack sense that had bloomed during training hadn't faded. Even now, she could feel the pulse of Blood Moon territory like a living thing beneath her feet. Sense the movements of wolves in the forest below. And strongest of all, she felt him. Cal's presence burned at the edge of her awareness like a second heartbeat, steady and sure. He was in his office 3 floors down, but the bond between them had grown so intense she could almost taste his emotions of focused determination as he worked. The underlying current of possessive satisfaction that she was here, in his space, surrounded by his scent. The mate bond was no longer a whisper. It was a song that thrummed through her veins with every breath. "You're thinking too hard." Cal's voice came from the doorway, rough with morning and something darker. "I can feel it from downstairs." Alara turned and her breath caught. He leaned against the frame in nothing but low-slung gray sweatpants, his muscular torso on full display. Morning light carved shadows across his chest and abdomen, highlighting every ridge and plane. His dark hair was disheveled, silver eyes heavy-lidded but intense as they tracked over her. She wore one of his shirts, had stolen it from his closet last night because being wrapped in his scent helped quiet the restless energy coursing through her. On her, it fell to mid-thigh, the soft fabric doing little to hide her curves. Cal's eyes darkened as they traced the length of her bare legs. "I was thinking about what Zara said," Alara managed, though her voice came out breathier than intended. "About the real danger being inside Blood Moon. Dara sees threats everywhere." Cal pushed off the doorframe, moving toward her with that predatory grace that made her pulse quicken. "It's what makes her good at her job. But right now, I'm more concerned with how you're handling everything." He stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his gaze. Close enough that his body heat washed over her skin. Close enough that she could see the subtle tension in his jaw, the way his hands flexed at his sides like he was restraining himself from touching her. "I'm fine," she said. "Better than fine. Yesterday felt ... right. Like I was finally becoming who I'm supposed to be. You were magnificent." His voice dropped lower, rougher. "Watching you move, seeing your volve rise to the surface," he broke off, jaw clenching. "Do you have any idea what it does to me? Knowing you're mine, that the bond is taking hold." Heat flared in Alara's core at the raw hunger in his words. She'd spent days learning to read pack dynamics, understanding hierarchy and tradition. But this electric pull between them transcended everything she'd studied. "Show me," if she whispered. Cal's control shattered. One moment he was standing before her. The next his hands were on her waist, lifting her effortlessly. She gasped as he backed her against the balcony railing, his body pressing flush against hers. The cold metal at her back contrasted sharply with the furnace heat of his chest. "Alara," her name was a growl against her throat as he buried his face in the curve of her neck, inhaling deeply. "You smell like me now, like us. It's driving me insane." His lips brushed her pulse point, and she shivered. Her hands found his shoulders, fingers digging into hard muscle as he trailed hot, open-mouthed kisses along her neck. When his teeth grazed her skin, not breaking it, just a whisper of pressure she couldn't suppress her moan. The sound seemed to inflame him further. His hand slid under the shirt she wore, palms hot against her bare waist, thumbs stroking the sensitive skin just below her ribs. Alara arched into the touch, her body responding to him with an urgency that should have frightened her but instead felt inevitable. "I want to mark you," Cal rasped against her ear. "Want everyone to know you're mine. But not until you're ready. Not until."